Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. This is the African Crested Porcupine, and we are playing the new Planet Zoo Arid Animal Pack. Today we're going to be building a desert house for porcupines, meerkats and sandcats just behind the water terraces. Let's go. So I'll tell you all about the plans for the desert house in a second, but firstly let's cover off what we're going to do today. So today we're going to build habitats for the meerkats and for the African Crested Porcupine, and build the exterior of the desert house itself. So we have got a lot to get through. We're going to start with the meerkat habitat first of all, and then we'll get on to the building, and then we'll get on to the porcupines, which are absolutely amazing, by the way, as are the new camera options in this update. Oh my god, I spent so long filming the cinematics for this episode. Even if you are not a content creator, I would highly recommend playing with them because you're going to have so many amazing views of your zoo. It doesn't matter if nobody else is going to watch them, you're going to have a lot of fun just doing this. I know a lot of people enjoy game photography, and this, I've been asking for a camera mode or better camera modes in Planet Zoo for a long time, and we have finally got them, and they do not disappoint. So this is going to be the meerkat habitat here. This is going to be inspired slightly by my own meerkat habitat in Tekton Zoo. I really liked that one back when I built it, but that was a long time ago, and I think we can do a much better job of it now. So the reason we're building this big circle here is that originally this was going to be a mixed habitat for porcupine and meerkat, which is one of the things I found out in my research. I kind of assumed porcupines would be kept on their own, especially the African crested ones, what with the whole enormous spikes thing, but it turns out they are so confident in their ability to do some serious damage to anyone trying to attack them that they're actually really chilled. As long as you don't attack them, then they're not going to give you any problems, and meerkat and porcupine is quite a popular mix in zoos. But the problem is the space requirements of the porcupine are pretty sizable, and the cute little habitat I was trying to build did not work at this size, so we'll shrink it down to meerkat size in a second. And speaking of the meerkats, let's pop over to Tekton Zoo and grab a few of our meerkats here, one of the beta females and a few males, to start our new little tribe, and then we'll get back to San Bernardino and start working on the desert house itself. The meerkat habitat that we've just started is going to sit in a desert garden just outside the desert house, and the house is going to be heavily inspired by a recent trip I made to Chester Zoo here in England. It's an absolutely amazing zoo. I loved it. One of the things I really noticed when I was there, apart from how gorgeous the whole place is that you're walking around on a path, there's plants everywhere, and then suddenly you're inside a building, and a lot of the habitats start inside a building and then end outside a building, or vice versa. There's loads of different viewing opportunities, and I really wanted to try and replicate that here. So the porcupine habitat is going to be an indoor and outdoor habitat with two areas. We're going to start with the building here. I'm getting the roof in. The building is going to be a very modern white building, almost Tekton Zoo style, but a bit more modern looking than that. And the idea is that it's going to be sort of like a blank canvas, so that the habitats that cover the front of the building are what catches the eye, and the building just sort of sits there in the background. Now it's going to have an extensive interior as well as an exterior, but the interior will be what we concentrate on next week, along with the sandcat habitat and maybe some exhibits. So I've just put the first piece of floor in there, and we're going to rotate that round, and that leads me very nicely into this week's Franchise Masters. So we've all seen this happen in our builds, crazy flickering on the pieces when you have two pieces in the same space. So how do we fix it? Now you can solve this very easily indeed. All you need to do is take one of the pieces or sets of pieces like we have here, select them, and then just move them up or down by 1 pixel. That is all you need to do. So we've moved this down by 1 pixel, and bingo, no more flickering. Problem solved. Alright, back to the desert house. So we're going to rotate this round to form the roof and the floor of the building. This building is going to form a big semicircle that lines up nicely with the circular meerkat habitat, and then we're going to have habitats both in and outside of it, and they will also be circular. There's going to be a very circular theme to this build. And with the basics of the building done, let's get back to the meerkats. So we're going to sink the terrain down a little bit in here just to give a bit more height and give us some room to build with. And then we're going to do some terrain painting. So I'll fill it all in with coarse sand, and then draw in some highlights with the fine sand, and then some lowlights, I guess you'd call them, with the soil, just so we can get some nice variety in the habitat. We want this to look as interesting as possible, and doing that with desert builds is really difficult. You can't just fill it with beautiful green plants. long grass, etc. You've got a lot of sand to play with, so it's pretty tough to make it look interesting, but we are going to do our best to succeed on that today. I don't do a lot of desert builds, so this has been a real learning experience for me. We're going to get the paths in, going to run them right around that habitat there, and then into the building and past the beginnings of the two other habitats that you can see there. We've got the porcupines on the left here, and then we've got the sandcats on the right. We won't be looking at the sandcat anymore in this episode. We're just going to concentrate on finishing the meerkat and building the porcupine habitats. So we're going to lay the barriers in here using the Z key to rotate them so they're in exactly the right place. We're going to have low glass barriers just a little bit above this wall here. I want the wall to be really low so that people get good views of the porcupines. We also need to make sure that they're not going to be reaching in and getting stabbed. So we'll run a path from the back of the picnic area out into this area and put the paths in. So you can see there's going to be probably 3 entrances into this area eventually. Right now there's going to be 2, one from the Palm Cafe and one from the picnic area. So we're going to use these Africa pieces to hide the glass barriers. Looking good, that looks nice and smooth. And then we're going to use these 2 pieces here to build the meerkat habitat. So this is the mud walls with the strangler fig roots that we used in Amazonia. And this is a burrow. I want to do something interesting with these. So the first thing we're going to do is recolor the mud walls to get us more of a sort of sandy appearance and get it fitting more of the desert theme. And we're going to put some of the new plants on as well. So in this update, we have got quite a few, I think 9 new plants I counted. All of them deserty, obviously. We've got some really nice bushes like this. Zoos use things like this quite a lot as a sort of secondary barrier. So if you fill somewhere with old branches, gnarly old plants like this, if they're big enough and the animals can't get through them, then you can restrict access to various places by using those. So we're going to put those in, and then I'm going to have multiple burrows in this habitat. I'd like to have 3 or 4, but the most we can fit in with the hitboxes is 2 of them. But we'll have 1 at each end of this outcrop that I'm building here. This again is inspired by Chester Zoo. They have a wall for their elephants which has loads of little sort of holes and crevices in it, where I presume they hide food as an enrichment item, and I was really taken with how that looked. I really liked it. That is a sort of inspiration for this. Just wanted more than 1 burrow, so rather than it being like a centerpiece, we've just got little holes in this wall that the meerkats could get in and out of. These burrows wouldn't actually go underground if this was a real zoo. This would lead into the back of this wall here, which we're going to turn into a sort of small shelter for the meerkats, which the keepers would have access to for cleaning and things like that. And obviously we've copied and pasted this wall, so we're going to do lots of new roots and spinning around the stalactites and things like that to get a sort of unique look to it and make sure it doesn't look copy and pasted when we're finished. We'll put these walls all the way around here and put some concrete in the roof, and that'll be the shelter pretty much finished. So it is a little close to the edge now that we've made it bigger, so we'll just go ahead and move that into the center again, get that in the right spot, and then we're going to take the tops of these stalactite pieces, cut off the bottom parts, and use this to put a base in. So if we just copy these right around the edges, so they're just poking out a bit like that, we get a really nice natural rocky outcrop kind of look, rather than it just sort of raising up out of the terrain out of nowhere. And then we're going to build up some rock work so that the meerkats can actually get up on top of their shelter. We know they like to do their sort of sentry duty thing, where they find the highest point nearby and climb up it so they can keep a watch out for eagles, etc. So we're going to let them get up there using these rocks, and then we'll muck around with the colours until we can get it to match the rock work behind it. There we go. That'll get the meerkats up there. Pop in a tree and a few more bits of vegetation, not too much, like I said earlier, with this being a desert build, but a few bits of dring grass and stuff like that just poking out should do the trick. And then it's on to the porcupine habitat. So in order to prevent people getting quilled, I don't know if that's a term or not, we're going to dig a little ditch here so that the habitat is lower at the front, to get a bit more space between the guests and the porcupines. And then same as the meerkats, we will do some terrain painting to get a nice varied looking but still deserty terrain in here. And then in my research, one of the things I found out was that porcupines are really keen diggers, and the African crested porcupine is probably the strongest of all of them. So the best way to do their habitat is to provide them with a substrate that they can dig in, like the sand that we've got here, but make sure that underneath it you have a floor of concrete, so that once they've dug through the sand, they can't just then carry on digging into the earth and escape. So I thought it'd be fun to have a little bit of the habitat where it looks like the porcupines have dug down to that level and the zoo haven't filled it back up again yet. So just a bit of concrete down there and some decals should sell that idea. And then it's on to my favourite part of the habitat. So one of the reference images I found when I was researching this, it looked like the back of the porcupine's habitat was made out of one enormous giant log, almost like the tree log viewing gallery in Jurassic World, if you've seen that. And when I looked really closely at it, I could see it was like poured concrete or some sort of molded thing just to make it look like that, but it was really effective. I wanted to have something similar in this habitat. So we're going to use a load of the tree trunks and the fake tree trunk as well, this one here, to create a big log wall that's going to cover the back of the habitat and have an archway in it that lets the porcupines get from outside to inside. This took quite a lot of building, but I'm really happy with the final result. So basically just loads and loads and loads of tree trunks. I use the fake one as the base, and then I cover it in the real tree trunks, and then just make sure they're all rotated and spun round and moved into the right position so that they are just poking out like this one here. And then that gives us that sort of log wood texture across the whole thing, but also you have little bits of sort of concrete poking out as well, and it just looks really effective when it's done, especially with the archway that we're going to build in a second. So I'll show you a little bit of this, but this took a long time, so I'll cut most of it out. Just want you guys to see sort of how I do the first section of it, and then we're just going to copy and modify it all the way along the back of the habitat until we've got the shape that we want. And then we're going to put some plants on it. It might look here like the porcupines can just sort of walk up onto this and then escape over the glass barrier. So that is where the plants come in with the secondary barrier. So we're going to use loads of the new dead bushes like this one and completely cover the top of this with spiky, gnarly undergrowth that the porcupines would not want to go anywhere near, almost as spiky as them. So once this is all the way along the top, they won't be able to climb out of here. We'll have some more on the bottom as well, just to make sure that they are safely contained. Looking good. Okay, now we're going to do something I wanted to do ever since the Tropical Pack came out, which is to use the new bark pieces to make some hollowed out tree trunks. This is where the porcupines are going to sleep. Because they're nocturnal, a lot of time in zoos, obviously they're going to be asleep at the time that the guests are there. So you want to make sure to encourage them to sleep somewhere where the guests can see them. So we're going to rotate this bark around in order to make a tree log. We'll copy it to make it a bit bigger as well. I very much doubt the porcupines are going to actually fit inside this in-game with the hitboxes, but we might be able to get them to sleep in front of it using the sleeping hay. So we'll put this into the habitat and join it up to all the trunks that we have at the back already to make it look nice and natural. Get it to the right position. You can see the sleeping hay there. And then we're going to start chopping bits of the trunk off and replacing them with one of the other bits of tree bark that's a bit smaller so we can get a nice natural look to it. And if the porcupines decide to have a little sleep inside here, then the guests will still be able to see them even though they're asleep. Like I said, I've been wanting to do this for ages, ever since these pieces were added into the game, so really happy that I managed to get them into this build and perfectly suited for the porcupines as well. Alright, next up we need to give the porcupines the ability to get from the inside to the outside parts of their habitat, and we're going to do that with an archway. But we're going to build this archway using a very similar technique to what we did to the wood at the back of the habitat, and try and get like a wooden, natural looking archway. Not that wood would ever grow like this as far as I'm aware, but it's gonna sit in nicely with everything else we've got, and it's a really nice effect when it's done. So more of the bark pieces. This time we're gonna have them further apart, and we're gonna use them to make an arch rather than a trunk. So we'll spin them around on this axis this time, and once we've got this to the correct length so that it joins between the two big trunks on either side at the back there, then we can cut half of it off and just use this to create the archway. So if we spin this round and then get it the right way so that we've got the bark side rather than the wood side facing forwards, we can then move this up into where it needs to go. And you can see already the beginnings of the archway that we're going to build here. And while I finish that off, a few things that I want to speak about. Firstly, as always, if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button. It really helps my channel out. Secondly, the next episode of San Bernardino Zoo will be this Saturday as normal. Yes, you're getting a bonus episode, you lucky, lucky people. And thirdly, this desert house is going to be called, and you will see this when we finish the building itself at the end of this episode, the Katmai Desert House. Kat is my contact at Frontier. She is a wonderful human being. She's been enormously helpful to me, and I just wanted to dedicate the building to her. And in American zoos, which is where we are here, it's pretty common to name exhibits after people or companies that have sponsored them. So I figured it would be quite a nice American sounding name for the habitat as well if it had a sponsor. So thank you, Kat. The final stage of the porcupine build is to make a little tree protector. So porcupines love to gnaw things, being rodents. So we're going to make a little cage for the tree in their habitat just to make sure that they don't eat it all. Put it over the tree, and then we'll put a little bit of greenery. Going to allow myself a couple of green plants here just for a splash of colour. And that's pretty much the porcupines done. Two more things to do before we see our porcupines and meerkats in action. Firstly is the desert garden itself. So there's going to be little pockets of desert garden all over this little area. And I'm just going to show you how I build one of them, and then you'll see all of them in the cinematics at the end. But we're going to put a Joshua tree and some cactuses or cacti in there, and then we use rocks to put a little border in. This will take us round to the keeper gate for the porcupines. And then I'm going to copy a arrangement I saw in the desert house at Kew Gardens here in England, as closely as I can with what we've got in the game. So this is how their cacti were sort of arranged, and a few other plants in their desert house. Not a botanist myself, so I'm relying on their skills. But if I can make it look like theirs, then I figure I'm going to have a pretty good looking desert garden. We'll get rid of all that grass. That's not appropriate. There we go. Get the sand in, and then we'll get some more different grasses, some rocks, and a few of the drier, more deserty plants. A few century plants for a splash of colour as well. One of the new bushes, we'll just sink that under there. I think this is new. We've now got 6 of these, and I think we only had 3 originally, but I could be wrong. There we go. We need a backdrop for the garden as well. So this big white wall is a little overbearing. So we're going to cover it up with my favourite piece in the game, the bronze statue plinth, which I use a lot recently, as you've probably noticed. We use that for a base for this building as well, and cover the walls with it. And that leads me on to the final part of the build. And oh my god, I love the new camera options so much in this game. The entrance. So I decided to hop into Sandbox and see if it was possible to build an entire entrance using only one piece, and it turns out it is. So having deleted what I'd built originally for the arch and mucked around to get this, which I really like, then we're going to hop back into the proper zoo now and put the Katmai Desert House entrance in place. That looks so much better than what I had there before, which is why I didn't show you me building it. Let's check out the finished habitats. Did I mention the new camera options? Oh wow, I love them so much. Here's the meerkat habitat, this guy just popping up to say hello, and here is the porcupines. I'm so happy with the back of this habitat, the way the logs run all the way across the back and then go up into the archway. And oh my god, the porcupines are so cool in this game. Frontier have really knocked it out of the park with these guys, the way their quills move. As they move, and the way they move their quills when they'll not move in. This guy is absolutely loving that little water fountain we put in. Here's an overview of the habitat. I cannot wait to get the sandcats in next week. Let's take a look at where we started today. And this is where we are now. We are halfway through this part of the desert house. And on Saturday, I will see you to put the sandcats in and the interior. Thanks for watching as always. Bye.